Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. That's it. That's it.
Hey, I'm back, week 6, and this week we're talking about a light meter. All right. Before we get into the light meter and how to use it, you're gonna want to memorize your f-stops. So, quick, easy tip if you haven't memorized them yet. All you gotta do is remember 1, 1.4. Just memorize those two, and then what you want to do is you double that 1, f2. Double that 1.4, f2.8. So it's f1, 1.4, f2, f2.8. All right. So on and so forth. You just go all the way up. I put them on the screen for you. Once you got that memorized, you have to memorize that every time you go up one stop, you're doubling the amount of light. Every time you go down one stop, you're cutting that light in half. You're gonna wanna have those f-stops memorized so that you can figure out exactly how bright you want your key side and how dark you want your fill side. All right, now that you know what your f-stops are, let's go over contrast ratios. You're gonna want to work with your standard ratios, your 2-to-1, your 4-to-1, your 8-to-1. And what that means is whatever number you have here, whatever f-stop you have on this side is 2 times brighter than the amount of light that you have on your fill side. Or 4 times or 8 times, so on and so forth. If I'm filming a scene, let's say, and I don't want it to be high key where it's the same amount of light. You don't want a 1-to-1 ratio, you want a 2-to-1 ratio. That means that the amount of light that you have on this side is 2 times brighter than the amount of light that you have on this side, all right? So a simple way to figure that out if you have your f-stops memorized is, let's say we're working with a f2.8 on this side. Then what you want to do is you want to decrease. If you remember, when you go down one stop, what you're doing is you are cutting the light in half. So if you want to go from a 2 to a 1, then you want to go from a 2.8 here to a 1.4 over here. A good way to remember this is to think about cloning yourself, for example. Like, if I want to clone myself one time, then now I have 2 Pauls, right? If I want to clone myself a second time, I'm cloning the new set of Pauls that I have. So I have 2 Pauls, I clone that, now I have 4 Pauls. If I do it a third time, then I'm cloning those 4 Pauls, and now I have 8 Pauls, so on and so forth. So if you just remember that you are doubling the thing that you already doubled, then you'll be able to figure this all out. I'm gonna show you how to use a light meter. I'm gonna show you the simple way to do it. I'm gonna go through it real quick so that you don't have to worry about like all the technical stuff, just how to use it, why to use it. So let's go. This is an incident meter. You have an incident and you have a spot meter. You can get an attachment to use this as a spot meter. I personally don't use that. So we're not gonna go over that today. We're just gonna go over an incident meter, how to use it. All right, when you get one of these light meters, depending on which one you get, you're gonna have different settings. You're gonna have a Cine setting, an HD setting. It really just depends. If you get this particular one, you wanna put it on the Cine setting, and then you're gonna wanna input 3 different pieces of information in here to get the image where you want to. One of the first things you wanna do is you wanna set your frame rate, your FPS. I got mine set to 23.976. You might want to set yours to 24, whatever your camera is set at. The next thing that you want to do is you want to set your ISO, and you want to set your shutter angle. So your shutter, if you're doing video, most of the time, unless you're doing something crazy or creative, you're going to keep it at 180. As far as your ISO, check your camera on the red. We're going to go with 800. If you're using your Blackmagic, you probably want to use your native ISO and go with 400. And what that's going to do is you'll have all your information in there, and it's going to give you a number here, which is your aperture number. So that number here is what's gonna tell you what you need to set your aperture for on your camera to get proper exposure. When you're starting out, when you're starting to get your scene together, you're gonna have an aperture in mind that you wanna use. So in this particular instance, we're gonna use 2.8. What that does is if you have everything else set like I just showed you how to set, it's gonna tell you an aperture number that you can use to get proper exposure. So in this situation here, I've already set everything up, but I'll show you how to do this really quickly. You wanna go in here and you wanna take this light meter, and you wanna put it as close as possible to your subject's face, and you wanna point this little dome towards the light, and it's gonna give you a number, and you're gonna be at a 2.8. That's what I wanted to shoot at, and that's why that's a 2.8. So if you set let's say you wanted your aperture to be a 2.8, and then you put this up to your subject's face and you get a 2.0. then what that's telling you is that you would have to lower the aperture on your camera to 2.0 to get proper exposure. Or you, in this scenario, you can get your subject a little bit closer to the light, and that'll get you at your 2.8. As you can see here, I got my boy Steve sitting in the chair. We got him with the Aperture 300D. We got him lit, and we set this at a 2.8. I brought this white show card in because I wanted the light to reflect off of this, just to serve as an example. We wanted to show you guys what a 4:1 contrast ratio looked like. And then when we measure on his fill side, we got an f1.4. So that means that we went down from a 2.8 to a 2 to a 1.4, which is 2 stops. So you got to remember again that whenever you go down a stop, you're halving the amount of light. So if you do that twice, then that's why this is we're going 2 stops. That's why it's a 4:1 contrast ratio. If you move the white card out of the way, then we're working with an 8:1 contrast ratio. So we're rating this at a 2.8 on his key side, but on his fill side, we're at a 1. So we went down 3 stops. So if you remember before, what you're doing is when you double something or you halve something, but when you half it once, right? And then you half it again, you're halving the thing that you already halved. So if you remember that, then an 8:1 means that you went down 3 stops. It might be a little confusing at first, but once you memorize your f-stops and you memorize that every time you go up a stop, it's double. Every time you go down, it's half. And you memorize the example that I gave you about cloning yourself, it'll come really natural to you on set. Don't feel bad if you're not getting it right off top. Just spend some time memorizing this. Once you get your light meter, start practicing, start messing around with it. And I guarantee you, in a few days, you'll get it. It'll start making sense to you. And after that, your images are gonna go from looking the way they look now, they're gonna look 10 times better. Once you use this light meter, you'll be able to make your images look more like what you got in your head. And the most important thing I think that you learn from using a light meter is that once you know what your proper exposure is, you start to experiment with making different parts of your scene dark or brighter. And that's when your images start looking more dynamic and you get a little bit more confident. So I definitely encourage you to get one of these. It doesn't have to be this one. It doesn't have to be one of the most expensive ones. I don't have one of the most expensive ones, but get something. And if you can't afford one of these, I think there's a light meter app on an iPhone. I'll try to find it and link it for you. But yeah, just start using them and you're gonna love it and you're gonna love your image. All right, appreciate y'all. Appreciate my boy Steve coming to help out. And you wanna say goodbye to the people?
Hey, goodbye to the people.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, I'll see y'all next time. I appreciate you being here. I don't know what we're covering next time, maybe false color. We out.